Xander Hawkins wiped the sweat from his brow as he stepped out into the sweltering heat of Ixora's twin suns. The human mechanic had been looking forward to exploring the alien marketplace during his shore leave from the starship Nova, but he hadn't anticipated the oppressive humidity that hung in the air like a tangible force. Adjusting his moisture-wicking shirt, Xander made his way through the crowded stalls, marveling at the array of exotic goods and even more exotic species that thronged the narrow lanes. Bioluminescent fabrics shimmered next to displays of pulsating fruits, while hairy tentacles exchanged credit chips with scaled claws over gleaming tech components. As Xander turned to examine a stall selling what appeared to be anti-gravity boots, he collided heavily with someone coming around the corner. Stumbling back, he instinctively reached out to steady the other person and found his hands gripping soft, cool skin. "I'm so sorry I didn't see you there," Xander apologized, looking down at the individual he'd nearly knocked over. His breath caught in his throat as he found himself staring into eyes that swirled with iridescent colors. The alien was undeniably feminine, with delicate features and shimmering lavender skin that seemed to glow from within. She wore a flowing gown of some diaphanous material that accentuated her lithe form. The alien woman started to speak, but then her eyes widened as she glanced down at her wrist. Xander followed her gaze and saw a slender bracelet that had begun to emit a pulsing bioluminescent light, bathing them both in an ethereal blue glow. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd around them as onlookers pointed at the glowing bracelet. Xander shifted uncomfortably, not understanding the sudden attention. "What's going on?" he asked, looking back at the alien woman who was still staring at her wrist in shock. "Is your bracelet supposed to do that?" You're my fated mate," she whispered, her musical voice tinged with disbelief. "The Lux Band has chosen you." Xander blinked, sure he must have misheard her. "I'm your what now?" The alien woman shook her head as if to clear it and straightened, meeting his gaze with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. "I am Talaxia Solaris, daughter of the Solaris merchant clan, and according to the Lux Band, which only activates in the presence of one's predestined life partner, you are my fated mate." Xander's mind reeled as he tried to process this information. Fated mate, predestined life partner, he'd only just met this alien woman, and now some glowing bracelet was saying they were meant to be together. Before he could formulate a response, a group of imposing aliens with the same lavender skin tone as Talaxia pushed through the crowd, led by an older male who radiated authority. They wore ornate robes and had intricate patterns etched into their skin. "Daughter," the male said, his eyes flicking between Talaxia and Xander, "is it true? Has the Lux Band chosen this human as your mate?" Talaxia nodded, her posture straight and proud even as Xander saw a flicker of fear in her mesmerizing eyes. "Yes, father, the band activated when he touched me. He is my destined partner." Her father's expression hardened, and he turned to Xander with a piercing gaze that seemed to strip away all pretense. "Human, do you understand what has occurred here today? What this means for you and my daughter according to our most sacred traditions?" Xander swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He had a feeling that his shore leave was about to become a lot more complicated than he'd anticipated. "No, sir," he managed to say, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. "I'm afraid I don't understand at all." Talaxia's father nodded grimly, as if he'd expected as much. "Then you must come with us to our family compound. There is much to explain and even more to be done if you are to prove yourself worthy of this bond the universe has chosen for you." As the group of aliens closed in around him and Talaxia, ushering them through the whispering crowd, Xander couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just been irrevocably altered by a chance collision in an alien marketplace. And as Talaxia glanced back at him over her shoulder, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and something that might have been hope. He knew that whatever came next, he would face it head-on. For better or worse, fate had tied him to this mysterious alien woman, and he was determined to see where this unexpected path would lead. The journey to the Solaris family compound passed in a blur for Xander, his mind still reeling from the revelation that he was now somehow cosmically betrothed to Talaxia. The sleek hovercraft whisked them away from the bustling marketplace and into a quieter section of the city, where towering spires of iridescent metal and crystal reached towards the dual-sun sky. As they disembarked in front of a massive gate etched with intricate spiraling patterns, Talaxia fell into step beside Xander, her movement graceful and measured. "I know this must be overwhelming for you," she said softly, her musical voice tinged with sympathy. "The ways of Ixora and the Lux Band are unfamiliar to outsiders." Xander let out a shaky laugh. That's an understatement. Just this morning, my biggest concern was whether the Nova's engine calibrations would hold steady during our next warp jump. Now I'm apparently engaged to an alien princess. Not a princess, Talexia corrected with a small smile. Just the daughter of a merchant house. But you're right, this is not a situation either of us anticipated. As they passed through the gates and into a lush courtyard filled with fragrant blooms and tinkling fountains, Xander couldn't help but marvel at the opulence on display. Servants in shimmering livery bowed low as Talexia's father led the way into the main building, a soaring structure of gleaming metal and pulsing light. Inside, they were met by an older Ixoran woman draped in robes of shimmering gold, her lavender skin etched with even more intricate patterns than Talexia's father. Her eyes, a swirling mix of amber and amethyst, fixed on Xander with unnerving intensity. "So this is the human the Lux Band has chosen for our Talexia," the woman said, her voice rich and commanding. "A most unusual selection." "Mother, this is Xander Hawkins," Talexia said, her tone respectful but firm. "He is my fated mate, chosen by the will of the universe itself." The older woman circled Xander slowly, her gaze raking over him like a physical touch. "He is pleasing to look upon, I will grant him that, but there is more to a worthy mate than mere appearance. He must prove himself according to our traditions if he is to be accepted as one of us." Xander straightened his spine, meeting the woman's assessing stare head-on. "With all due respect, ma'am, I didn't ask for this, but if your traditions require me to prove my worth, then that's what I'll do. I won't back down from a challenge." A flicker of something that might have been approval flashed in the woman's eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Bold words, human. We shall see if you have the strength to back them up." Over the next several hours, Xander found himself immersed in a dizzying array of Ixoran customs and rituals. He was fitted with traditional robes, the fabrics shimmering and shifting in ways that made his eyes water. He was required to recite complex phrases in the Ixoran language, the words twisting his tongue into knots. And through it all, Talexia remained by his side, guiding him through each new challenge with gentle encouragement and infinite patience. As the twin suns began to set, painting the compound in shades of crimson and gold, Xander found himself alone with Talexia in a secluded garden, the air heavy with the perfume of night-blooming flowers. "I want to thank you," Talexia said softly, her iridescent eyes catching the fading light. "I know this can't be easy for you being thrust into our world like this, but you've handled it with grace and determination." Xander reached out hesitantly, brushing his fingers against the glowing Lux band on her wrist. "I won't pretend to understand all of this, Talexia, but I do know that whatever the reason, fate has brought us together, and I intend to see this through, no matter what challenges lie ahead." Talexia smiled then, a radiant expression that made Xander's heart skip a beat. "Together then," she said, twinning her fingers with his. "Whatever the future holds." But even as they stood there in the fading light, savoring this moment of connection, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. A figure with eyes that burned with jealousy and resentment, already plotting to tear asunder the bond that the universe itself had ordained. As dawn broke over the Solaris compound, painting the crystalline spires in hues of lavender and gold, Xander found himself being led to a vast arena on the outskirts of the estate. The structure seemed to be grown rather than built, with soaring arches of twisted metal that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Talexia walked beside him, her expression somber. "This is where you will face the trials," she explained, her musical voice tinged with concern. "3 challenges designed to test your worthiness as my fated mate. No outsider has ever attempted them before." Xander swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'll do whatever it takes, Talexia. I may not have asked for this bond, but I won't shy away from proving myself." As they entered the arena, Xander saw that a large crowd had gathered in the glowing stands, their iridescent eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. In the center of the arena stood Talexia's father and mother, flanked by several other imposing Ixoran figures. "Let the trials begin," Talexia's father declared, his voice echoing through the hushed space. "Xander Hawkins, human mate to Talexia Solaris, step forward and face your first challenge." Xander squared his shoulders and strode to the center of the arena, where a large, shimmering orb hovered in midair. As he approached, the orb began to twist and morph, resolving into a complex series of interlocking shapes and symbols. "This is the trial of the mind," Talexia's mother explained. "You must solve the quantum puzzle before you, demonstrating your intellectual prowess and problem-solving skills. Begin now." Xander stared at the floating puzzle, his mind racing. He had always excelled at spatial reasoning and pattern recognition, skills honed by years of working on complex engine systems. Taking a deep breath, he reached out and began to manipulate the shimmering shapes, his fingers dancing through the air as he rotated and rearranged the components. Minutes ticked by as Xander worked, sweat beading on his brow. The puzzle was fiendishly difficult, each piece shifting and changing in response to his movements. But gradually a pattern began to emerge, and with a final twist, the puzzle clicked into place, glowing with a brilliant white light. The crowd murmured in astonishment as Xander stepped back, his chest heaving. Talexia beamed at him from the sidelines, her eyes shining with pride. "The first trial is complete," Talexia's father announced, his tone grudging. "Xander Hawkins has demonstrated his mental acuity, but the challenges are only beginning." For the second trial, Xander found himself facing off against a hulking Ixoran warrior, his lavender skin crisscrossed with battle scars. "This is the trial of the body," Talexia's mother declared. "Prove your physical strength and skill in combat against our champion." Xander eyed his opponent warily, acutely aware of the differences in their size and strength. But as the warrior lunged at him, Xander relied on his quickness and agility, dodging and weaving around the larger Ixoran's blows. He struck when he could, targeting pressure points and weak spots with precision. The battle was brutal and exhausting, but in the end, Xander's speed and stamina won out. The Ixoran warrior lay sprawled on the arena floor, conceding defeat with a grunt of respect. The final trial was the most daunting of all. Xander was led to a shimmering portal at the edge of the arena, Talexia's hand gripping his tightly. "This is the trial of the heart," she whispered, her eyes filled with emotion. "You must journey into the realm of the Lux itself, where your true nature will be laid bare. Only the worthy can pass this test." Xander gazed into the swirling depths of the portal, fear and determination warring within him. With a final glance at Talexia, he stepped forward and let the shimmering light engulf him. What followed was a kaleidoscope of images and sensations, a whirlwind journey through Xander's own mind and soul. He saw himself as he was, flaws and strengths alike, laid bare before the cosmic power of the Lux. And through it all, one truth remained constant: his growing love and devotion to Talexia, a bond that transcended mere biology or tradition. When Xander emerged from the portal, he was greeted by stunned silence from the gathered crowd. Talexia rushed to his side, her eyes brimming with tears of joy. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "You passed the trials, you proved yourself worthy." But even as the Ixorans began to cheer and celebrate, a lone figure slipped away from the arena, his face twisted with rage and bitterness. Dalen, Talexia's spurned suitor, had seen his hopes dashed by Xander's success. And in that moment, he vowed revenge against the human who had stolen what he believed to be rightfully his. As Xander basked in the glow of his triumph and Talexia's embrace, he had no idea of the storm that was brewing on the horizon. A storm that would test the strength of their bond like never before. With the trials completed and Xander's worth as Talexia's mate proven, the couple began to look towards the future. Xander knew he couldn't stay on Ixora indefinitely, his duties on the Nova awaited. But the thought of leaving Talexia behind filled him with a deep ache he couldn't quite explain. As if sensing his thoughts, Talexia took his hand as they walked through the shimmering gardens of the Solaris estate. "I have a proposal," she said, her iridescent eyes gleaming with excitement. "What if I were to join you on the Nova as a cultural liaison and technical advisor? My people's knowledge of advanced propulsion systems and quantum computing could be invaluable to your crew." Xander's heart leapt at the idea, but he hesitated. "Are you sure, Talexia? Leaving your home, your family, everything you've ever known, it's a huge decision." Talexia smiled, reaching up to caress his cheek with a slender hand. "Xander, don't you see? You are my home now. Where you go, I go. The Lux bond has joined us in a way that transcends distance or cultural differences. Besides," she added with a mischievous grin, "I've always dreamed of exploring the stars. This is my chance to make that dream a reality." And so, with the blessings, however reluctantly given, of Talexia's family, the couple boarded the Nova hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges the cosmos had in store. At first, the adjustment to life on the ship was difficult for them both. Xander had to navigate the complex dynamics of explaining his sudden alien fiancé to his crewmates, while Talexia worked to adapt to the unfamiliar technology and customs of human space travel. But as the cycles passed, they found their rhythm, their bond deepening with each shared experience and obstacle overcome. It was during a routine survey mission on an uncharted world that the trouble began. The planet was a lush jungle, teeming with bioluminescent flora and strange, chittering creatures. But as the away team trekked deeper into the undergrowth, their equipment began to malfunction, screens flickering and distorting in inexplicable ways. Talaxia frowned as she examined her scanner, the device emitting a high-pitched whine. "There's some kind of electromagnetic interference coming from deeper within the jungle," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's wreaking havoc with our tech, especially the Ixoran components. We need to find the source." As the team pressed on, the distortions grew worse, until finally their comms cut out entirely, leaving them stranded and isolated. It was then that a figure emerged from the shadows of the trees, a figure that Xander recognized with a sinking feeling of dread. "Dalen," Talaxia gasped, her eyes wide with shock and fear. "What are you doing here?" The spurned Ixoran suitor smiled coldly, a cruel light dancing in his eyes. "Did you really think I would let you go so easily, my dear?" he sneered, his gaze flicking dismissively over Xander. "This human may have bested me in the trials, but out here, away from the watchful eyes of your family, out here I will claim what is rightfully mine." Xander stepped forward, placing himself between Talaxia and Dalen. "She is not a prize to be won, Dalen. Talaxia's heart is her own to give, and she has chosen me. You need to accept that and move on." Dalen threw back his head and laughed, the sound harsh and grating. "Oh, I'll be moving on, human, but Talaxia will be coming with me, and as for you and your crew, well, I can't have any witnesses now, can I?" With a cruel smile, Dalen raised a pulsing device, the same strange energy that had been disrupting their equipment emanating from it in sickening waves. "Goodbye, Xander Hawkins. I'll be sure to give Talaxia your regards." And with that, the jungle erupted into chaos, the very ground beneath their feet buckling and heaving as Dalen's device tore at the fabric of reality itself. Xander reached for Talaxia as the world around them dissolved into a maelstrom of light and sound, their screams swallowed by the roaring void. Part 5: Love and Legacy. Xander awoke to the feeling of cool hands on his face, gentle fingers tracing the curve of his jaw. He blinked, wincing at the bright light that filled his vision, and found himself staring up into Talaxia's iridescent eyes. "Thank the Lux," she breathed, tears of relief streaming down her lavender cheeks. "I thought I'd lost you." Xander struggled to sit up, his body aching with 1,000 pains. They were back on the Nova, he realized, in the stark confines of the medical bay. "What happened?" he asked, his voice raspy and weak. "Where's Dalen?" Talaxia's expression darkened, a flicker of anger passing over her delicate features. "Gone," she said simply. "When his device malfunctioned, it tore open a rift in space-time. He was pulled through before the breach collapsed in on itself. As for us, the Nova's emergency transporters managed to lock onto our biosigns at the last moment and beam us to safety." Xander closed his eyes, relief and exhaustion washing over him in equal measure. "It's over then, we're safe." Talaxia leaned down, pressing her forehead against his in a gesture of intimate affection. "Yes, my love, we're safe, and we're together, that's all that matters." In the days that followed, as the Nova limped back to Ixoran space for repairs and debriefing, Xander and Talaxia had time to reflect on all that had happened. They had faced trials and challenges that would have broken lesser bonds, had stood together against threats both physical and emotional. And through it all, their love had only grown stronger, tempered by the fires of adversity. When they finally stood before Talaxia's family once more, it was not as supplicants or outsiders, but as true partners, equals in every sense of the word. Xander looked into the eyes of Talaxia's father and saw not the cold judgment of before, but a newfound respect and understanding. "You have proven yourself worthy, Xander Hawkins," the old Ixoran said, his voice rich with solemn pride. "Not just as a mate to my daughter, but as a member of our family, our clan. The Lux bond chose wisely when it brought you into our lives." Xander bowed his head, humbled by the weight of those words. "Thank you, sir. I promise to spend the rest of my days striving to be worthy of that trust and of Talaxia's love." And as he looked to his mate, his partner, his soulmate, Xander saw the same promise reflected in her shining eyes. Theirs was a love that had been forged in the crucible of the stars themselves, a bond that would endure across time and space and every challenge the universe could throw at them. Hand in hand, heart to heart, Xander and Talaxia stepped forward into their future, ready to face whatever lay ahead. For they knew that as long as they had each other, as long as their love burned bright, there was no force in the cosmos that could stand against them. And so the tale of the human mechanic and the Ixoran maiden came to a close, their story passing into legend and song. But their love would endure forever, a shining beacon of hope and unity in a galaxy too often divided by difference and fear. A reminder that the heart knows no boundaries and that even the most unlikely of unions can change the course of worlds.